Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be talking to you about exit interviews. I'll explain what an exit interview is, how you should approach them as an employee, as a leader or business owner, and also as an HR professional. I'll also show you how to do exit interviews using an app called Notion, and I'll provide you with a free database and template and show you how you can duplicate it to your own Notion workspace. If you haven't used Notion before, make sure you stick around because I really think it is a life-changing app, and it's something that will begin to change how organizations and businesses do business and get things done. Before we get into that, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you would know I love to do exercise in the morning in my home gym before going to work. This morning was no different. During today's workout, I was going for a run around the block and I somehow ran into a tree branch that was hanging over the path that I was running on. I didn't see it until it was too late, which is why my forehead is a bit scratched up, so I'm hoping that isn't too distracting for you. So what is an exit interview? An exit interview is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's an interview in which an employee who has resigned is asked questions about why they decided to leave the organization. They are often conducted by a member of the HR team, but in some cases, companies will outsource exit interviews to a consultant or to a company that specializes in exit interviews. And during the exit interview, you'll be asked a lot of questions about why you decided to leave, what could have kept you at the company, and many other questions. So later in the video, I'll be taking you through a template of what I think are the best interview questions to ask based on my experience in HR and discussions that I've had with other HR professionals. So in terms of how to approach an exit interview, that really depends on the role that you are playing. There are three key roles: employee, leader or business owner, and HR professional. So if you are an employee, it can be really tempting to take the opportunity to unload, to say things that maybe later you will regret. And if you're watching this channel, you're probably aware that employee engagement leads to better business outcomes and better performance outcomes. You probably also know that employee engagement is a big problem for a lot of companies. Let's have a look at some stats. Obviously, we are living in unprecedented times, so it will be interesting to see how COVID impacts engagement. But as you can see here, employee engagement for the US, which is obviously a large population, reached a record high during May 2020, reaching 38% engaged employees. And Gallup have been tracking employee engagement in the US since the year 2000, so this is a 20-year high. It then dropped to 31%, which is the most significant drop that they've ever recorded. So whenever I'm looking at these stats, I always like to think about it from a small team perspective, a team of 10, for example. And I think that it's crazy to think that out of a team of 10, in a best case scenario, only 4 employees would be engaged. So it seems like a lot of employees are not engaged, which is why it's not out of the realm of possibility that you might be disengaged yourself. So you might feel good about resigning, and you might want to vent during your exit interview. That's not something that I would recommend. I think it's important to think about how you would feel reading your exit interview later, especially if you wanted to return to the company. Now, I know a lot of you will be thinking, Dave, I've left companies before. Once I decide to leave, I'm never going back. But I think it's a good idea to make sure that you don't burn your bridges, because you never know whether you might become a boomerang employee and return to your organization. I've done this myself. I was working for a large organization, I left to pursue some other opportunities, and then I came back to the same company. Personally, I found it to be a great experience. I was able to hit the ground running, a lot of things were still the same, and I had a lot of pre-formed relationships that I could draw upon. So I'd recommend that when you are doing an exit interview, think about the possibility of being a boomerang employee. When you complete your exit interview, approach it respectfully, constructively, and stick to facts about what you've observed and what you think could be improved. Okay, so let's talk about how you should approach them if you were a leader or a business owner. Hiring new employees is often an expensive part of running a company. It can take a long time for new employees to come up to speed, and when an employee leaves, it's often quite costly to replace them. There's the obvious loss of productivity whilst you're running with a vacancy, but there's also the loss of knowledge, the risk that it will cause other employees to resign, and the costs associated with recruitment. There are varying stats out there, but I've seen some in which they estimate that it can cost you up to 25% of an employee's annual salary to replace them. So if you are a leader or a business owner, it's really important that you understand why your employees are leaving. If you're a small business owner and you don't have an HR department or an HR team member, find an HR consultant who can conduct exit interviews for you and provide you with feedback and insights. In the past, I've consulted to small businesses, some as small as 4 employees in the entire company, and the business owners have asked me to do exit interviews when one of their employees has resigned. These small business owners understood how expensive it is to lose an employee, and they wanted to understand what they could do differently. So I was able to conduct an exit interview, I put a report together, and then I provided them with some insights and coaching. Using the information obtained from an exit interview, it can help you to understand trends and reveal what is and isn't working within your organization. Okay, so finally, let's talk about how HR should approach exit interviews. Now, I've seen some articles online in which journalists have written that HR doesn't really want to hear what you have to say, and I can say from my experience and discussions within my HR network that this could not be further from the truth. HR employees love exit interview data because it provides really valuable information that they can use to help improve an organization. As an HR professional, it's really important that you approach the exit interview in a respectful and considered way. I think it's best practice to redact any identifying names or dates and provide analysis to leaders on a quarterly or annual basis, providing trends and themes. Obviously, there are exceptions to this, and it depends on the organization and the situation. For example, if you had a leader who had multiple resignations in a short time period and there was feedback that needed to be provided, you need to act on that. You need to have a discussion with them. In terms of conducting the interview itself, it's really important that at the start of the exit interview, you ask the exiting employee if they are happy for their feedback to be provided to their leader. In the majority of cases, employees consent to this. And this is also a good way to ensure that the employee focuses on providing fact-based and constructive feedback because they know how it's going to be used. So now that you have a bit of an understanding of what exit interviews are, let's jump over to the computer and I will show you how to move beyond Excel spreadsheets into the world of Notion. Okay, so what I'll do now is I'll take you through the exit interviews database that I've built in Notion. I'll show you a few different views which will hopefully give you some ideas of how you could use this database. And at the end of this section, I'll show you how to duplicate this template, this database, to your own Notion workspace. And from there, you can amend it and you can change things around and start to populate it with real data. So if we go to the first toggle list at the top here, this is the exit interview database. You can see that it looks pretty much exactly like an Excel spreadsheet, very similar, but there are some subtle differences that make it a lot more powerful. So you'll see across the top, we have employee name, gender, job grade, salary range, we have length of service, exit date, and then we have number 1, 2, and 3 reason for leaving. And then we have direct leader at the time, department, 9-box categories, so where they sat in terms of a talent ranking perspective. I've also put together a separate video where I cover how to use Notion for a 9-box system. So I'll include a link in the description if you do want to check that out. I also have in there age at the time of exit and age range. So where Notion is more powerful and different to Excel is that each of these rows is essentially its own page in which you can put more information. So first off, let's open Nick Miller here and you'll see that the rows, the columns that I was just showing you are now going down at the top of this page. So you can see job grade, number 1 reason for leaving, number 2 reason for leaving, etc. And the idea is that you would go through and have a discussion with the employee and talk to them about these questions and ask them, do you have another job to go to? Why did you start looking for another job? And really ask them to explain why they decided to leave. And I've done a lot of exit interviews in the past where prior to the interview, the employees said, oh, I don't really have anything to contribute. I don't have anything to say. This will probably be over in 5 minutes. And after sitting down with them and having a good discussion, it ended up going for over an hour. So employees, especially when they're leaving, they do have a lot to contribute and a lot that they want to say. You just need to sometimes work hard to get them to open up and tell you the reasons that they're leaving. So the idea is that you would go through, get answers to as many of these questions as you can, and then you would pick in here, in this number 1 reason for leaving, what you think the number 1 reason is that this employee has decided to leave. You can then choose number 2 reason for leaving and number 3 reason for leaving. From there, I have a few different ways of looking at the same data set. I've created different views here. Let's look at the first one. So I'll just close this table here. This is exits by leader. So this is the same database, but I've set this up as a board view, and it's pulling from the previous database that I just showed you and showing you all of the different leaders and who has resigned and who they were reporting to at the time. So you can see Nick Miller had CC reporting to him when she resigned, and you can quickly scan across and see who has the most resignations. So you can see there that Tony Soprano has had 5 resignations. And this can give you some awareness and some visibility over who is resigning, who's having the most resignations, and is there an issue, and is there something that we need to talk about. Another handy view is reasons for leaving. You can see here, I've set this up as the #1 reason for leaving, and you can see that the majority of employees have picked misalignment with company values as their #1 reason for leaving. Another view that I have in here, exits by grade, similar concept, exits by talent category, where you can see how many of our high performing, high potential employees are leaving, what are our numbers looking like, and anytime you make an update to the database at the top here, it will make an update to all of these different views because it's all the same data, it's just different ways of looking at it. Finally, one more view that I think is quite powerful is the calendar view. I've set this up so that you can see at a glance how many employees exited in November. I've set it up so that it will show their 9-box category, and what you can do is click on the ellipsis up here, click on properties, and then select what you want it to show you. So you can say, let's turn off 9-box category and let's have a look at gender and see how many females do we have who are leaving. And you can go back and have a look at October, and you can look at September, and you can look at August. So you can at a glance see how many employees are leaving, and are they male or female or whatever you want to show. Depends what you select. The final thing that I wanted to show you is a little bit of a dashboard that I've set up at the bottom here. So I've set this dashboard up to show any high potential females who are less than 35. And you can see at this stage, Jessica Day is the only one who's showing up, and I'll show you the filter that I've used. So the filter is set to show any employees where gender is female, where 9-box category is any of those top 3 categories, and where age is less than 35. And so if I was to come up to the overall database, and if I was to select a female who is under 35 and change her talent category, you'll see her name will then pop up at the bottom of that dashboard. So if I change Erin Hannon to be an emerging star, you'll see she is now shown up in that dashboard at the bottom there. So if you were an HR team and there was multiple people who were using this database, anytime someone is making a change at the top there, it will show up in the dashboard. So I'll just show you the template that I've put together and how that works. So at the moment, this page here, Angela Martin, is blank. You can see there's no page icon. If I click on open here, and then if I click on this exit interview template, which I put together, it will, at the click of a button, populate the questions that I was just showing you. So then you can see all the questions are there, ready to go, and you can just populate them and record your answers. In terms of how to duplicate this to your Notion workspace, it's really easy to do. What I have done is I've set it up so that I am sharing this page. So I have a link here, and so I will put that in the video description so you can duplicate this to your Notion workspace. So then if I go into another Notion workspace that I have here and I just paste it into the top and then click enter, it'll now bring up that database that I was just showing you. And then it's just as simple as clicking on duplicate at the top there, and it will then duplicate to your Notion workspace. And then you have the ability to edit it and change it around. Okay, so now I'm hoping that you have an understanding of how exit interviews work from an employee perspective, from a business owner and leader perspective, and also from an HR perspective. And you also have a database and a template which you can start to use in your own Notion workspace. To truly help you apply what you've learned, it can be really helpful to think about what was most useful about this video. If you do feel confident sharing that, please drop a line in the comments because that might help someone else as well. I've put together some other videos covering Notion from an HR perspective and a career perspective, so I'll include a link in the description to some of those videos as well. If you do have any questions or comments, feel free to contact me on Twitter or send me an email, or you can leave me a comment in the comments section. Thanks again for taking the time to watch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up and I will see you in the next video.